Hello and welcome back. And welcome to Swansea. Croeso I Abertawe. I think that's how they say it in Welsh. I'm going to embark on another history walk around the town of Swansea. And in this video we'll look at what happened here during the Second World War and relating to the Blitz. I will also look at a story involving a famous boxer. But I'm starting my walk at the bottom of Princess Way. And outside the oldest building here on Princess Way, and it dates from 1875, and it's an old Victorian building in the Victorian Gothic style. The interesting thing about this building is it still has the scars of battle. All the pot marks from the explosions are on the outside of the building, especially around the stonework surrounding the windows. It's interesting that they haven't been repaired. Perhaps a reminder to what happened here all those years ago during the Second World War. The town of Swansea was, as I say, was heavily bombed during the war, but I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But this part of Princess Way was redeveloped in the late 1950s and the early 60s. And it was actually built on two previous streets, that of Cross Street and Fisher Street. And all the buildings around here are modern, except for the one down at the end where I've just come from. Most of Swansea town centre is modern buildings, all rebuilt after the Second World War, and very little actually remains of anything that we would recognise as old Swansea. But just up ahead is St Mary's Lane, and the oldest pub in Swansea. It's called the Cross Keys, and there's been a pub here since around the year 1330. But obviously the building here today is it's a little bit more modern. It's built on the site of the former St David's Hospital, but hospitals in the 12th and 13th century were a lot more primitive, and medicine was a lot more basic than it is today. Cross Keys pub is rather nice. I did call in there on one occasion, but anyway, that's another story. Just up ahead is quite an interesting statue. It's of a former MP for Swansea, Sir Henry Hussey Vivian, 1st Baron of Swansea. He died aged 73 in 1894, and as well as being an MP for many years, he was also a local industrialist as well. But the site is also significant for another reason, because this was also the site of the Wassail Gate. This is one of the old gates into the old medieval town of Swansea. The town was protected on the east by the River Towie and by a wall on the western side. There were two entrance gates, the North Gate and the Wassail Gate, and the wall stretched down to the south towards the marshlands and the river estuary. St Mary's Church behind me was established in 1328 by Henry de Gower, the Bishop of St David's. There have been quite a few churches over the centuries on this site, and the current one was rebuilt after the bombings of World War II. The town of Swansea suffered considerably during the Blitz during World War II, as did many towns and cities throughout Britain. The first raid occurred in Swansea at around 3:30 in the morning on the 27th of June 1940. The last raid was on the 16th of February 1643. However, there were 3 nights of raids from the 19th, 20th and 21st of February 1941. And they were known as the 3 Nights Blitz. The town centre today is largely unrecognisable from pre-war Swansea. However, the basic footprint and layout of the town has largely remained, as you'll see shortly. Just crossed over Care Street into the upper part of Princess Way. Unlike the lower part, this part was also built over an existing street, and that street was known as Goat Street. And Goat Street stretched from Care Street just behind me up to College Road just ahead. But this part of Princess Way is quite unrecognisable from that of pre-war Goat Street. In the middle of the town centre is the town square. There used to be housing all around here, including a department store called Ben Evans. I think that was established around 1895 and had the nickname of the Harrods of Wales because of the fine merchandise that it sold. However, that was bombed during the Second World War, and afterwards the council turned it into gardens. It's actually a memorial gardens to commemorate the 230 people who died during the Blitz here. The square was remodelled, or the gardens were remodelled, back in 1995, and they concreted it and put a fountain in. But it's seen better days, and I'm pretty sure the people of Swansea would rather have some sort of nice garden here rather than a concreted area. It really is quite an eyesore. There is seagull guano all over the place, and most of the steps and the fountain is falling into disrepair. During the regeneration of the gardens back in 1995, they installed this leaf boat sculpture behind me. Apparently it cost £40,000. Seems a lot of money for a sculpture. But just ahead is Care Street, C-A-E-R Street. And Care is an old Welsh word meaning a fortress, similar to the word Chester in Old English. And all the buildings, although they look old, are actually modern, with mock Tudor facades. It's nice to see they've kept the look of these old buildings, even though they happen to be modern. Despite all the bombings during the Second World War, part of the old castle has survived. The castle was founded here by the Marcher Lords of Gower in 1106. The castle was rebuilt in stone around the year 1290. I made a video last year on the castle. I'll drop a link in the description box below. The oldest street in Swansea is this one, and it's called Wynn Street, and people have been walking down here for the past 1,000 years. And the statue of Sir Henry Hussey Vivian that we saw earlier, well, that used to stand at the top in what was a sort of a market square area. But even though, I guess they're currently digging it up down here, but even though some of the houses are fairly modern, there are still one or two older properties that date from the 19th and 18th centuries. in 1804, the first English language newspaper called the Cambrian was launched from offices in this street, along with the South Wales Evening Post. But there's a pub down here on the left-hand side called the Bucket List, but it used to be called the Adelphi. And there's a story that an American GI called Rocky Marciano once went into the pub when he was stationed here during the Second World War. Apparently he ordered a glass of milk, and a rather loud Australian decided to make fun of him for his choice of beverage. Well, Rocky didn't take kindly to that, and the story goes he punched him and he fell to the floor. Rocky Marciano went on to have a glittering career as a boxer. At the bottom end of Wynn Street in medieval times was a stream called the Cadle, and that connected the River Towie to the marshlands a little further west, and in turn connected to the town's walls by the Vassal Gate. But this is where I end this vlog. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and be sure to leave a comment as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.